Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Saturday. It's the 9th day of August, 2025. And as always, some more stories have come across the wire, as usual, that continue every day, every hour, every day, it seems, to set the stage for the events that we're looking for. And the events we're looking for are ones that the Bible has told us about ahead of time that are setting the stage for the second coming of Jesus Christ to the world. What an exciting time to be alive, isn't it, to see all these things? So let's get right to them. All right, this is a follow-up of a story we did earlier from the Jerusalem Post. They put a new headline. Now, get this. Arab media claims hostage deal mediators are rushing to reach an agreement before the Gaza City takeover. Again, from the Jerusalem Post. So this is the addition to the earlier headline there. They're not only working to do it, they're rushing to do it because they don't want to see any, attempt to take over the Gaza City by the Israelis. So that's fascinating. We'll get to that in a minute. Then, of course, two stories about Russia. Donald Trump said he will meet Vladimir Putin on August 15th in Alaska. Many of you probably heard about that. We'll talk about that. Some Newsmax. And then today, Zelensky says, he warns Ukraine won't give up any land after Trump-Putin summit announcement. In other words, Breitbart story. In other words, Trump talked about each giving up some land and making some agreement. And Zelensky goes, no, we're not going to give up any of the sovereign territory of Ukraine. And I need to be in the meeting too. So anyway, it's almost like Trump and Putin, the varsity team will meet, and then you got the JV team, Zelensky, who will eventually be invited in. The big boys are talking first, so we'll see what happens. So that's that story. And then finally, a really interesting story: dead men walking. Iran moves surviving nuclear scientists into hiding. A report says this is from Ynet. We have a very interesting take on this about this story here. We'll give it to you when we get to it about the Iranian scientists that are into hiding, the ones that survived the first time around the attack by Israel. All right, let's look at the headline. Okay, here it is. Arab media claims hostage deal mediators are rushing to reach agreement before Gaza City takeover. Jerusalem Post. In other words, they're in a real hurry. Mediators for a hostage and ceasefire deal are rushing to reach an agreement ahead of Israel's operation that would take over Gaza City. Asharq News reported on Saturday, citing informed sources. The Saudi-based news source cited sources claiming there are talks discussing a package of proposals to end the war, which includes the release of the remaining 50 hostages and a complete IDF withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. The discussions also mention the exile of some Hamas military wing leaders and the establishment of a technocratic government to manage the Strip, supported by a police force. Now, according to the story, the sources claim that the mediators who comprise, get this, U.S., Egyptian, and the Qatar officials have begun discussing these proposals with each other before conveying them to the two sides. In other words, Israel doesn't know about this, neither does Hamas. The sources claim there's a possibility of an agreement. Really? Okay. The sources made additional claims, such as Hamas showing flexibility to reach an agreement. How many times have we heard about flexibility over the last year and a half? And the flexibility just, let's face it, just isn't there. One of the issues holding up the Egypt-Qatar plan is reportedly Hamas's disarmament. Current discussions center around freezing Hamas's weaponry so they can hold on to it but not use it. Now, is that one of the stupidest things you ever heard? You can hold on to your weapons, just don't use them. Okay. It also calls for Hamas to relinquish its power over Gaza, something they'll never do. All right. So the new framework proposes having a Palestinian Arab committee run Gaza. Who these people are, God only knows, and oversee reconstruction efforts until a new Palestinian administration with a police force is established. Hamas said on Thursday that the terror group would treat any force formed to govern Gaza as an occupying force linked to Israel. In other words, no matter where you get them from, Palestinian or whoever they might be, they're an occupying force. We won't accept it. All right, now here's our take on this. The fact that they're trying to fast track a deal now is not surprising. Again, we emphasize that Hamas has no interest whatsoever in coming to the table. And why should they? When Emmanuel Macron next month is going to proclaim a Palestinian state, got so many countries every day jumping on the bandwagon there. And so they don't have to do anything, just hold fast. And sooner or later, according to what these countries are trying to do, a Palestinian state will come up and Hamas will still be there. So anyway, there, like we had the story today from Marco Rubio. He said once Macron declared the Palestinian state, there was no longer any reason for Hamas to be interested in negotiating. There isn't. Why should they? And so again, we'll see what happens. Headline number two, and the next two stories are on one we've been following for a long time, Trump and Russia and Putin. Trump says he's going to meet with Putin on August 15th. Earlier, we said, we quoted Trump as saying that he's going to try to meet him next week. Well, August 15th, that's 6 days from now. They're going to meet in Alaska. And of course, Alaska is, right not far away, a stone's throw, literally from Russia. So this is a Newsmax story. So Putin's going to go there. Trump's going to go there and they will have a meeting on August 15th in Alaska to negotiate an end to the war. Trump made the announcement on social media after he said that the parties, including Ukraine President Zelensky, were close to a ceasefire deal that could resolve the 3.5 year conflict, one that could require Ukraine to surrender significant territory. This is the key. Let's remember that. Addressing reporters at the White House earlier today, or yesterday, Friday, Trump suggested an agreement would involve some exchange of land. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both, the Republican president said. In his evening address to the nation on Friday, Zelensky said it was possible to achieve a ceasefire as long as adequate pressure was applied to Russia. He said he had held more than a dozen conversations with leaders of different countries, and his team was in constant contact with the United States. Putin claims four Ukrainian regions mentioned here: Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson, as well as the Black Sea Peninsula, Crimea, which he annexed in 2014. They're claiming them. Now, Russia wants these four regions. His forces do not fully control all the territory in the four regions, but he believes Putin they belong to Mother Russia. Okay, Ukraine has previously signaled a willingness to be flexible in the search for an end to the war. What has ravaged its towns, cities, and killed large number of its soldiers and citizens. It's been a horrible war. The people have been killed, as we all know. But accepting the loss of a fifth of Ukraine's territory would be painful and politically challenging for Zelensky and his government. Under the deal, according to Bloomberg, Russia would halt its offensive in the regions along the current battle lines. Well, it sounds like a possible breakthrough, but yes, here comes our next story from Breitbart. Zelensky warns Ukraine won't give up any land after Trump-Putin summit announcement. It's the AFP. Ukraine will give up land to Russia, President Volodymyr Zelensky warned early on Saturday, hours after Washington and Moscow agreed to hold a summit in a bid to end the war. Presidents Putin and Trump will meet in the far north U.S. state of Alaska near Russia on August 15th to try to resolve the 3 year conflict, despite multiple warnings from Ukraine and Europe that Kiev must be part of the negotiations, but they're not this first time around. Announcing the summit on Friday, Trump said there'll be some swapping of territories. We just read that for the betterment of both Ukraine and Russia without providing further details. Now, here we go. Ukrainians will not give up their land to the occupier, Zelensky said on social media hours later. Any decisions against us, any decisions without Ukraine are also decisions against peace. They will achieve nothing, he said, adding that the war cannot be ended without us, without Ukraine. 3 rounds of negotiations between Russia and Ukraine this year have failed to bear fruit, and it remains unclear whether a summit would bring peace any closer. And as the article goes on to say, sadly, tens of thousands of people have been killed since Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 22, with millions forced to flee their homes. Putin has resisted multiple calls from the U.S., Europe, and Kiev for a ceasefire. Zelensky says Kiev was ready for real decisions that can bring peace, but he said it should be a dignified peace without giving details. All right, who knows when a peace deal will ever be made? We certainly don't, because it sounds very difficult right now, just like the Hamas-Israeli thing, almost impossible. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of the Putin-Trump meeting and what kind of things Trump's going to offer to Putin to give up. And there will be some inducements there, obviously. So again, we don't know. We'll see. Now, for our purposes, like what we talk about here on Breaking News, are only stories that have something to do with the Bible, what it says about last days Bible prophecy. Russia is front and center in the last days. They're going to be leading a invasion of Israel, according to Ezekiel 38:39, in the last days, with countries like Iran, Turkey, and others on their side, and they're going to be supernaturally destroyed by the living God. But to get to that place, they have to get out of this Ukraine war, because they certainly can't do a second war and lead that if they're bogged down in Ukraine, where all of their assets are there. So he said there are a lot of things that are keeping this from happening right now, exactly the Ezekiel 38:39 scenario, and one of them is the war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. And another one, too, is what's taking place between Israel and Hamas. That has to be settled, because according to Scripture, and this is very important, we know where we're heading. When Israel is invaded by Russia, Turkey, other countries, Iran, etc., they're feeling like they're at peace. Their borders are secure. There's no reason to worry. In other words, they think they can't imagine an invasion happening, least of all from Russia. And so it needs to get to that place, and we're certainly not there yet. So, like we said, it's going to take some time for this to happen. And Libya, which doesn't even have an army right now, the country's divided in half, has to, get back together, has to unify and come up with an army, because Libya according to scriptures, ancient Libya, maybe even Morocco and Algeria, but at least Libya has to be able to, put some type of army together to join in with Russia to be part of the invading force, and that's not possible now. The United States has to be out of the picture. They cannot be helping Israel because they won't help Israel at the time of the end. Yet we know they will help. They will not be there because Putin, or excuse me, well, could be Putin, but Gog, the leader of Russia, when he decides to invade, what's he going to do? Well, he decides to do it. He's got this coalition he puts together, and he's not fearful of any country coming to the side of the United of Israel. So where's the United States in all this? No one comes to Israel's aid. He's not afraid of anybody coming to Israel's aid. It means the United States, for whatever reason, cannot be involved in this. And we've been talking about this for years. And so all this still has to happen. Now we'll see how it all plays out. It's going to eventually play out. But what we must realize, it's all going to be playing out in God's timing. And we don't know how long that's going to be. And that's why we have to be patient, have to take it a day at a time, watch the events. But what's amazing for our purposes is how it's all coming together miraculously right now, the stage being set. So we're excited by that. All right, now headline number 4, dead men walking. Iran moves surviving nuclear scientist into hiding, report says. This from Ynet News. Tehran relocates its surviving nuclear scientists to secure locations after Israel's Operation Rising Lion eliminated over 30 researchers, sparking internal calls to pursue nuclear weapons. Iran has moved its remaining scientists following the assassination of 30 of these researchers by Israel as part of the Operation Rising Lion. UK-based outlet The Telegraph reported Saturday. So this is a UK Telegraph story that Israel picked up, Ynet picked up, and others are picking up how they moved their surviving scientists. Now here's a little further information from The Telegraph. It said that it's seen the names of more than 15 of these scientists on a list of roughly 100 people in Israeli possession. Israel reportedly believes they must now decide whether to continue their work and risk being targeted or change careers altogether. In other words, what are these scientists going to do? Israeli experts told the paper a new generation of Iranian scientists have already stepped into the roles of those killed, describing them as dead men walking. Ronen Solomon, an Israeli intelligence and defense analyst, said the remaining figures are involved in adapting a Shahab-3 missiles for nuclear warheads, making them equally strategic targets for Israel. Israel believes some of these surviving scientists are now working at the Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research, the SPND, on projects involving explosive, neutron physics, and warhead design. The former head of the Iranian Strategic Desk at Israel's military intelligence, a man named Danny Citrinowitz, told the paper, any scientist that deals with the nuclear issue will be eliminated or will be threatened with elimination. The June 13 strikes reportedly wiped out decades of expertise, killing scientists and researchers in nuclear physics. Iran denies it's pursuing, of course, it's always denied, it's pursuing nuclear weapons, insisting its programs for peaceful civilian purposes. Israel, however, signaled will continue targeting any figures tied to the program. So it really doesn't pay to be an Iranian nuclear scientist. They are indeed dead men walking. Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story here. During the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, with the United States came in, I got a note from, well, actually an email, was a text from our friend Nader. For those of you who knew, Nader is a good friend, known him for 15, 20 years. He's Iranian. He's a Bible-believing Christian. He's works with special forces. He really knows what's going on in the world. He's told me so many things that are going to happen ahead of time. They all come to pass, like he said, including the beginning of the war. If you were with us then, back at the week that the war started on a Thursday between Israel and Iran on Monday, he told me, he said, Israel's going to attack immediately. That there's so much chatter amongst the, special forces that something's going to happen soon. I said, really? And this is the same day Trump said nothing's going to happen. Same day Netanyahu said it's not going to happen. Same day their defense minister said nothing's going to happen. He said, oh no, it's going to happen soon. And it did happen a couple days later, just like he said. Well, what was interesting during the war, he sent me this video. And he said, these are Iranian scientists, the ones that are left over. They're leaving the country. And of course, they were tailed. They were, wherever they went. And in fact, it's funny when I sent him this story today, because it says they're tracking them down. Nobody knows where they're at. He told me where they're at. They know very well where they're at. So these poor guys, they're literally dead men walking. And so they need to change careers, that's for sure, because the Israelis are so good at tracking people down of knowing where they're at, and then they pick the right time, and they know the place they're at to eliminate them. So again, Iran, and it furthers what we've been talking about for the last couple of years. Iran is a secondary character in last days Bible prophecy. They're not a primary. Russia's the primary one. Iran is a confederate, a proxy along with Russia. Iran is not going to be the big bad military group that the Israelis fear. They're going to be a group that wants to destroy Israel still, but they'll be a secondary group. And everything we've seen from the 12-day war and along since then, with all the people on the inside, the partisans or the saboteurs, whatever you want to call them, in Iran, doing the job of continuing the infrastructure of the country, just kind of eliminating. They've been eliminating some people there actually too. There's a Russian-led people in the country that are part and parcel of this. So anyway, it continues to show exactly what the Bible says. This is going to be Russia up, Iran down. The United States will eventually be a non-player, but Israel will be in the center. But Israel will survive. We got the Bible to tell us that. Our book, 25 Signs, we're near the end. It's a free download from our website, Educating Our World. Under the heading of Bible prophecy, we go into that in signs 9 through 11 in great detail. And also our book, the Ezekiel 38-39 Invasion, which explains what's going to happen, players in great detail. So we're excited to see all these things fall into place. The timing, though, and this is something we continue to emphasize here, the timing is something only known to God. It's certainly not known to us. So we just take it a day at a time. We see it miraculously coming together, but we can't put a time frame on it. We just don't know, and don't believe anybody that says they know, because they don't. All right, anyway, that's the end of the stories for today. I'm Don Stewart. We'll have some more, God willing, tomorrow morning to bring you up to date with everything. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.